During an election cycle in Aotearoa, the headlines hit fast and hard. They are engineered to bypass logic and target your emotional core. Without a solid framework to filter that noise, it is dangerously easy to get carried away by whatever political current is pulling the hardest in the moment. Take a look at a recent proposal from the ACT Party. They want to introduce a 7-year prison sentence for domestic abusers who use family pets to coerce and control their victims. Then, in the exact same news window, New Zealand First announced a proposal to restrict voting rights to citizens only, removing that right from legal permanent residents who live and work here. These two announcements appeared side by side, presenting voters with two very different versions of social priority. One offers a new protection for the vulnerable, while the other seeks to narrow the boundaries of democratic participation. To navigate this landscape, we have to step back and apply active critical thinking, shining a light through the political rhetoric to separate verifiable facts from fear-driven populism. Let's look at the mechanics of the ACT policy. Their plan amends the Crimes Act to specifically target abusers who psychologically manipulate victims by threatening their animals. Currently, if police respond to a family violence call-out, a victim might escape while the pet is left behind. This policy closes that legal loophole, strengthening protection orders so an offender cannot withhold, sell, or dispose of a companion animal. This bar chart shows abusive partners are 11 times more likely to intentionally harm an animal. As the graph shifts, we see the human toll. Over half of domestic violence victims delayed leaving a dangerous home because they felt responsible for their pet's safety. We can see the physical reality of this crisis right now. According to its founder, the National Pet Refuge Charity is operating at nearly 98% capacity, constantly sheltering animals caught in family violence. This legislative approach is built on a foundation of measurable, objective data, addressing a specific loophole with numbers that prove the scale of the problem. By grounding the legislation in verifiable truth, this policy actively protects the vulnerable and sets a clear baseline for constructive governance. Now, let's pivot to a second strategy unfolding at the same time, driven by New Zealand First. Party leader Winston Peters proposed restricting democratic participation exclusively to full citizens, removing the current right of legal residents to vote at the booth. The immediate tangible consequence of this rule is the active disenfranchisement of thousands of people who live, work, and pay taxes continuously in Aotearoa. Peters justifies this by framing citizenship as a formal bond. By openly questioning the allegiance of permanent residents, the rhetoric manufactures suspicion around people who are already integrated into the community. This domestic policy ties into a broader geopolitical framing. The party has been stoking immigration fears by warning against the India Free Trade Agreement, claiming it would allow significantly more immigration. When we contrast these rhetorical claims against the wider political reality, they struggle to hold water. Rival conservative leaders have even publicly dismissed these discrimination claims as just wrong. Where the pet policy responded to documented violence, this proposal shifts the focus toward national identity and the systematic exclusion of a specific demographic from the voting booth. This side-by-side graphic weighs the documented statistical evidence of the ACT policy against the abstract, rhetoric-based framing of the New Zealand First policy. The coexistence of these policies creates a specific challenge for the viewer. The high emotional weight of protecting animals can occupy the same mental space as a policy that narrows democratic access, potentially softening the public's immediate response to a more exclusionary agenda. The danger here is distraction. When the public is focused on the heavy emotional resonance of animal protection, it becomes easier for anti-democratic proposals to slip past without deep scrutiny. True civic guardianship, tikanga, requires us to isolate and evaluate every single policy on its own evidential merits. We cannot judge a political platform solely by its most emotionally appealing headline. To protect the democratic integrity of Aotearoa, citizens must relentlessly demand factual justification for every law, pierce through manipulative rhetoric, and firmly reject any tactic designed to disenfranchise our communities.